In the beginning, there was a king, a charm, and a betrayal. This is not just a story of how a river was born. It is the story of how a forest became sacred. A man named Nyakuyimba stole the rainmaking charm from the Rozvi King Murimo. With his wife and brothers, he fled to these mountains, hoping to escape the king's wrath. They split up, but the warriors were relentless. Knowing capture was inevitable, Nyakuyimba made a choice. He gave the charm to his wife, who vanished into the safety of the trees. He turned to confront his fate. The warriors were merciless. They killed him and cut off his head as a trophy for their king. But the spirit of the rainmaker was not easily contained. The head began to grow heavier and heavier until it burst forth an immense gush of water that nearly swept the warriors away. They had witnessed the birth of the Save River. Here, in this vantage point, this Chirinda, she knew her husband was dead. And here, she gave birth to a son and passed the charm to him, beginning a legacy that would echo through the generations.
Okay, Chirinda Forest started maybe as a farm. It's owned by the American Board of Missionaries, I think, as far back as maybe 1890s, 1880s. They came and the American missionaries came here and settled here at a place called Mount Cylinder. They established a mission there. They owned the rest of the forest here. And the other portion was owned by another farmer. The third one was owned by a Mr. or at some point Mr. Swynnerton, who settled here. Mr. Swynnerton came as a manager of the adjacent Nyakuyimba forest estate.
This forest is not just a collection of trees. It is a sanctuary, born from the sacrifice and guarded by spirit. It is the southernmost rainforest in Africa, a 950-hectare kingdom of biodiversity, with 606 being tropical rainforest. And its very existence is intertwined with the story of Nyakuyimba. If the spirit of Nyakuyimba resides anywhere, it is in the giants of the forest. This mahogany has stood for over 65 generations. It has witnessed the rise and fall of rainmaking dynasties and the arrival of an unexpected guardian. In the early 1900s, an English naturalist, Charles Francis Massey Swynnerton, made this forest his home. Though a world away from his birthplace, he was captivated by Chirinda's magic. He studied its flora and fauna with a reverence that echoed the old ways. He too became a protector, adding to the forest's botanical wealth and fighting to preserve its sanctity. The Rhodesian government, recognizing his dedication, later placed a memorial to him within this grove, a testament that the spirit of Nyakuyimba can inspire guardians from anywhere.
But he had also bought a property nearby, which later became part of Chirinda Forest, where we are right now. And then that Chirinda Forest, part of the forest which was owned by the American Board of Missionaries from the 1990s. Later, that part was acquired by government together with Mr. Swynnerton's farm and another farm which is called Rodbeck to form the current Chirinda Forest, which was then gazetted as one Chirinda Forest. That's how it then developed. Mr. Swynnerton did quite a lot of work in the forest to the extent that when he died, what was called the Association of Farmers in Rhodesia had to set up a memorial structure. We will visit that structure, a memorial structure here in the forest in honor of the work that he did. He did a lot of collection of wildlife species animals, bird life, the plants. We did a lot of collection, and quite a number of them, the birds, squirrels, and trees themselves were named after him.
It shows us that the protection is a continuous thread, from the ancient rainmakers to Swynnerton, and now to us, the foresters, conservationists, experts, commission, and the community all share the same goal. We are the current embodiment of that protective spirit. The treasure of Chirinda, this entire ecosystem, remains buried and safe under this vegetation because of the unbroken chain of care.
You don't find this forest type anywhere in Zimbabwe. In fact, they say it's the only one, maybe south of the equator and outside the Congo Basin forest. It's just the only one here. Here in Zimbabwe, I know in the eastern highlands of Zimbabwe, I visited the entire eastern highlands of Zimbabwe. Well, there are forests, but not one like this with tree heights as high as the ones we see here. So it's unique in that the big tree, because I'm used to it, doesn't sound like very fascinating, but it is indeed fascinating. If you do not know about it, you just want to have a look at it. And once you look, you calm down. But it's important. Everyone must visit that big tree. It's a major a tourist attraction, which we feel everyone should visit. And then the trees around, the heights, the diameters are not found anywhere else so easily. You see, it's important to be walking under a canopy for, say, 3 kilometers. And in some cases, you are unable to see the sun. When you are in this forest, you can start seeing the sun around 10 o'clock a.m. That's when you start seeing the sun. Particularly this particular, maybe around 3, it's gone. You can't see the sun anymore. So you are always under shade in this forest. And I'll talk about the forest itself later.
The rainmakers are gone, and the great rituals are a memory. The challenge today is that the spiritual connection has faded for some. But the legacy of guardians like Swynnerton and the ancient law of Nyakuyimba remind us that this is not just a recent problem. The call to protect is timeless.
And how do we have that forest, those trees growing that high? It's because of the southeasterly winds that approach the forest on a rise, the rise on the Chirinda hill or Chirinda mountain, if you like. It is this moisture that is brought by the southeasterly winds, you see, that keep the forest moist, that encourage competition for sunshine, competition for nutrients, whatever. And hence the trees grow so high and they are so crowded, it's thick. The composition there is of course determined by nature, where we've got a variety of tree species. But as I said, we also need to credit the community for being able to conserve, for partaking in conservation. Maybe elsewhere you would have serious problems with communities coming in, invading and settling anywhere. And of course government, I think, did quite a great thing by gazetting it. Gazetting means it is protected under law, unlike the forests elsewhere. Of course the forests are protected, but when you say it's gazetted, you also set aside resources for it to protect it.
When you hear the story, you don't just see a tree, you see a hiding place. You don't just hear a river, you hear the birth cry of the Save. The forest comes alive for them. And when you see Swynnerton's memorial, you see that this forest magic touches everyone. It's a story for the whole world. From this vantage point, we see clearly. We see that the story of Chirinda is a cycle. It began with an act of preservation, a wife hiding a charm. It continued with a naturalist who loved it as his home. It continues now with a new choice. What will our legacy be? Will we be the generation that allowed the story to end? Or will we be the new guardians? Will we, like Nyakuyimba's wife and all who followed, see the danger and choose the sanctuary?
The name of the big tree, before being named Kaya Antuteka, it was Kaya Nyaska, named by Swynnerton, Charles Swynnerton. Now, this side of the big tree was struck by lightning. It was 1972 according to the history. And it was 64 meters height before it was struck by the lightning. Right now, we measured some 10 years ago, it was 54 meters. Since it reached the height of the tree, it really never grows up because the canopy is now flat. So there's no leading tip over there. So we're believing that it's still 54 meters tall. People, they say it's dying, but naturally it's not dying because the impact of the lighting doesn't enter to the pith of the big tree. So it forms a resistance. That's why it now the living bark is now crushing, it tries to cover the area which has been struck by lightning. This big tree is 4.5 meters diameter. It's about 16 people or 16 men if you go around stretching your hands together. All right? Here in Chirinda, we have famous trees. This is one of them, the big tree. The name of the big tree is the red mahogany. This is the strongest or one of the strongest species in Chirinda forest, where we have Kerebia brugata, we have Ficus chirindensis. That is one of the threat to the living trees. But if it strangle the tree, then the tree dies, then it remains that one, okay? Then we have what we call Cordycephus gongxenium. That is number 10 if we check to our list. Then it is sub-canopy. And this is the largest canopy. We got 5 canopies in Chirinda forest. So we got what we call ground level, where we got some flowers. Then we go some maybe branch level, bush level, going up to the last level. That is what we call canopies. That is in Chirinda forest. It's where we are now.
Come to Chirinda. Walk softly. Listen for the stories in the wind and the water. The river flows, the forest stands, the story awaits. The vantage point is ours.
Quest pilgrims, life's a journey with no end to say the least. Mystique, music drives me further from this mental peace. Who says green is green and the skies are blue? Who says life's good or great, just not for you?